Good morning. I'd like to call the November 1st, 2022 bid board meeting to order. We have acknowledgement of a quorum. First item of business is approval of minutes from the October 4th meeting.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'm going to do this a little bit out of order. We'll take the historic presentation at the end. So let's do the financial report and then 3 and 4 really quick and then come back to it.
Sounds good. The financial report's included in your packet. The items to note from last month include the final encumbrance for the lights and decorations for the roofline lights with Rob Steiner and Steiner Electric. So that project is complete. I just needed to connect with them, get a meeting on schedule on the training for the controls. And then we also have the encumbered cost that needs to be added for the install of the holiday decorations with David J. Frank. But otherwise, everything is pretty much the same. Electricity has gone up, and then we did have a small amount of expenses under marketing for some signage for no bicycles, scooters on the sidewalks.
So just curious, we never talked about that.
It was just a couple $100 expense, and so I have the ability to spend up to $500 on things that seemingly make sense for the district, and that seemed to make sense for me given we actually, Mike, you were the one who brought it forward in an email asking about signage for pedestrians.
Yeah, I did bring it up. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I took that as a directive to get that done.
It seems to have worked.
Great.
By the way. The only comment I have on it is I've received several questions from board members about the $200,000 that was put in the budget. Mm-hmm. And there is concern that that was taken out, and it's still in here. So that $200,000 was put in the budget to go towards Main Street, but not until this group approves those expenditures. So just for clarification. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the holiday sponsorship.
Sure, this is something we've discussed the last number of years at this time in November, so I added it today. There are a couple opportunities coming up, one of which we've sponsored. The bid has sponsored a movie at the Bend, like a free children's movie in December. And I did speak with the executive director of the Bend. They're definitely interested and willing to partner on a movie showing. We just briefly discussed it to make sure that that was something they're still willing to do, and talked about maybe doing a matinee for kids before the Christmas parade on Sunday after Thanksgiving. But we can still talk about other dates if you're interested in multiple dates. We did do a few in the past that were different evenings or things like that. He did say the price is $500 to get more of a box, a hit Disney movie or something like that. They were recommending the movie Enchanted because there's a new Disenchanted movie coming out. So, and then the other holiday sponsorship just that you've discussed before and up to you is the West Bend Winter Warm-Up, which is in January. There's ice sculptures that can be purchased as a sponsorship. So those are the two items.
So the first one, as you and I talked about, I don't have a problem doing the movie. I think it's kind of cool. But this year they're saying one, so we need to talk about multiples. But I think the biggest downfall is the last 2 years we've done it. I don't think it's really been known to the public that the bid has been sponsoring it and paying it. They've always said, hey, we'll put stuff out on the marquee. It's never been done. So I know there's different leadership there, but if we do it, I would say that we need to make sure that there's acknowledgement that the bid is paying this bill.
So we're paying $500 for one movie? Or it's played multiple
That's what
times?
they're proposing for this
Potentially,
year.
it could play multiple times. We just need to work out those details that we just kind
Yeah.
of briefly talked about. What would be the cost, and that's what we did in the past. Is we spent $500, and it was for the same show. So,
And then the people can go for free? That's how that works? Okay,
Yep.
got it.
and then they still would charge for like concessions, and, you know.
Sure.
But yep, it would be free for attendees.
Okay. Do we have to choose the movie now? Is that what you're saying? No?
No.
Well, in the past, they did a Facebook vote on it. We had like 4 different titles. And
That's true, and we could do that again if you'd like. They were just threw out a recommendation.
Just
another
probably not Bad Santa.
That Facebook
We'll see.
post to get engagement and allow the community to select could also be an opportunity for exposure that the bid board is sponsoring that too.
I agree.
I hope it could even be at the beginning of the movie for all those who were there. I know that's
Yeah,
late,
there's-
late game, but worst case, that's kind of the final shot. Do we need a motion for that?
If we're going to spend the $500, yes.
Well, I'd say we make a motion for $500 for a movie, and we make sure that they do some marketing. So
Just a clarification, $500 for how many showings?
one, I think.
No, last year they did, I think, 3 or 4.
Oh,
So I think we should clarify that.
That needs to be clarified.
Okay.
Right now, it's just discussed as one,
Okay.
but we can talk about it and see if they're willing to do more than one.
Okay, that sounds good.
So I have a motion, need a second.
Second.
I have a motion, a second. Further discussion?
Are we adding in the promotion for the winter in with this, or is it a separate one as well? Okay.
And no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, now let's talk about the second opportunity.
Sure. So the second opportunity is the Downtown West Bend Association and the city partner on the West Bend Winter Warm-Up event that takes place January 21st and 22nd. It takes place annually. There's sculptures placed throughout downtown, and there's the opportunity to sponsor an ice sculpture. And the cost, again, is about $500. Might be a hair less, but maybe $495, but approximately $500 for a sculpture. And there's, endless options to choose from. It does include a sign that would say sponsored by the Downtown Bid Board or Downtown Business Improvement District. So that's an opportunity if you'd like to explore.
Where does so when they do this, if there's profits, where does that money go?
So if there are profits, it goes into their fund for the next year's event for the Downtown West Bend Association. So they have a small fund balance from last year. I was recently at their committee meeting and are planning to use it on this year's event, primarily for marketing.
It is a great event. It brings tons of people downtown because they have some really unique sculptures. It's still a lot of fun.
isn't that more of an opportunity for local businesses to promote themselves versus us? I'm a little ice cold on the subject. Sorry.
Jeez, this morning.
Oh, man.
It seems strange to me on that one for the bid.
I don't disagree, but-
to sponsor that one, but it
I'd
seems
rather
like
take that
businesses should step
$500
up.
to get business into the businesses when we
Yeah.
rip up Main Street personally.
I don't know. I mean, we're always looking for ways to get our name out there. So, I mean, if people don't know who the bid is, I mean, granted it is $500, but I mean, we're doing a movie that we haven't, gotten a lot of attention on. Hopefully we will this year, but I'm kind of for it. I think it gets people downtown I've seen a lot more people downtown for that event than I have several others, but open for discussion.
It's a great event. There's a ton of people that come downtown. Whether we want to promote the bid district or not, I think us being involved is probably a good thing, just as a an olive branch, shall we say. So I would be in favor of it if we were to go that route.
Yeah, and it brings several weeks of traffic. You know, the weather's always a wild card. The sun is an enemy to ice sculptures, but it's brought several weeks of traffic, all kinds of traffic, not just from West Bend. And so I think as a community partner and collaborating with the downtown West Bend would probably be a good thing. There's no downside there.
So somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to provide up to $500 for an ice sculpture on behalf of the bid.
Second.
Motion, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion, and I guess I'll open the discussion. The only question I have is can we, if we're going to do this, let's make sure it goes into this year's expense
Okay, sure.
so that we're not taking it out of next year's marketing budget for redevelopment.
No, okay.
Are you going to choose the design, Jess?
I can. I'm happy to do so. If you have a preference of design, we could bring it back in December and select, but otherwise.
Maybe we could do a cityscape
Cityscape.
for the bid board.
I'm not sure we can get a cityscape for $500, but I could look into that.
Just a thought.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is tree lighting on Thursday, the 3rd. Do you want to give any highlights, or are we just going to announce that we're lighting the tree at 6? Or is it
Sure.
6:30 that it's actually being
Well,
lit?
actually, I mean, this year we're expanding the event a bit. It's going to be really fun. We have a lot of music and entertainment lined up. So starting at 6, there will be a live singer that's been provided by the Bend. And the singer will perform for a while until approximately 6:30, which is when we usually kick off the ceremony. We'll have an MC and comedian, Erica Rhodes. There's also a partnership with the Bend. We're kind of giving this a try this year. Erica Rhodes is going to be here all week. They're celebrating Erica Rhodes Week at the Bend, and she just loves West Bend, so it seems like a good fit. So she'll MC that event, provide some entertainment, and then we'll have our remarks from Mike and from the mayor, do the countdown. Then after that, it'll be followed by more music with the River City Brass Band and the West Bend High School Choir. So it should be really festive. We have Santa and Mrs. Claus lined up for people to take photos with the new tree, and yeah, it'll be great.
Are there any like food vendors or anything like that?
There will be some hot chocolate given out for free. The Downtown Association has offered to pass out hot chocolate.
Okay, nice.
Thank you.
This might be the warmest year ever.
So you may have to get a cold
Maybe
water.
iced coffee.
Where is the hot chocolate the first year? Okay, any questions? Otherwise, hopefully everybody can be there. The tree has grown again this year. It's going up as we speak. They're putting it up right now. So, hopefully everything goes well with this year. I called Jess yesterday because David J. Frank does my store as well, and I will tell you that it was the best organized year ever. So I think hopefully they got things figured out this year. So with that, we'll go back to item 1, which is the Historic District presentation by the State Historic Preservation Office. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having us here today. It sounds like y'all have a lot of exciting things coming up.
Could you speak up a little bit?
Oh, sure, absolutely. Can you hear me now? Okay. Yeah. Well, I am Elizabeth Hilton. I am the National Register Coordinator at the State Historic Preservation Office in Madison. I'm here today to talk about the Historic District, and it's my understanding that y'all have heard a bit about this in the past, but for those of you who have not or would like a refresher, I'm just going to give a brief overview here on the National Register program and the tax credit program, which is a huge incentive of being listed on the National Register. And it'll be followed by Tracy Snell, our wonderful consultant, who helped put this together. So the job of the National Register is my job is to help facilitate the process of this getting properties listed. We work with cities, consultants, property owners from the start to the finish to make sure everything runs smoothly. And I also work closely with the tax credit office at the State Historic Preservation Office to help everything run smoothly. So, what is the National Register of Historic Places? This was established in 1966 with the National Historic Preservation Act. It is maintained by the National Park Service. Examples in town include your really beautiful courthouse and post office, which is in the downtown historic district. And it is an official list of designated sites, buildings, structures. It ranges from architecture to archaeology. So, what does listing provide? This is an honorific designation. It shows that you have a very important building in your community. By listing, you can use, sorry, my notes just got messed up a little bit. So, listing does not provide, have any issues with, sorry. So there is limited protection when it is, when the property is endangered by federally funded or licensed activity. And it helps provide the owner of a designated property with seeking tax credits. So, how are properties listed? Well, it starts with initial consultation with the State Historic Preservation Office. You can submit a questionnaire to determine whether your property is historically significant or not. Then you go through the process of survey and documenting, researching, and write findings on an organized form that's given by the Park Service. After you go through all those steps, there is a review board hearing in Madison. They meet quarterly, and they determine whether the property should be listed or not. After that, your property is officially listed on the State Register of Historic Places, and then it goes on to the Park Service where it would seek final approval on the National Register of Historic Places. This process can take well over a year, start to finish, as it's a lot of information to gather. Many local governments seek listing to support their community in creating historic districts. This can be a daunting process. There's a 100-page bulletin that helps describe this form, and this is why you hire wonderful consultants who can help guide you through this process. So how are properties evaluated? Well, the Park Service has set up a series of 4 criteria. One is your building associated with significant events or with broad patterns of history or historic trends of trade and commerce? Another criterion is if the property is associated with individuals who had specific contributions to history, individuals whose activities are important and profound, such as politicians or established artists. And the third one is architecture. This is the easy one. You can easily look out and see if this building has significance because it has high-style elements, really detailed workmanship, or for the architects. And the last one is for archaeology. But your building must retain integrity. That means it must show those original character-defining features. So what is a historic district? Properties can be listed individually or as a part of a district. With a district, you have contributors and non-contributors. Contributors are buildings that retain integrity and add to the cohesive character. Non-contributors are typically buildings that are outside the period of significance, which is a date range of when the buildings were determined to be significant. And they usually are altered and lost many of those features. So, what does it really mean to be listed? Are there limitations? Let's try to go over these misconceptions. All these examples will show you that you can basically do whatever you want with your property. All of these will be false. Surprise. All right, if my property is listed, I must open it to the public. Absolutely not. House, museums, hotels, government properties, these are public places that you can go in, but you're not required to show it to people on house tours or anything like that. If my property is listed, I may not paint my house a color scheme that I like. This is false. You could make it a rainbow, as my 6-year-old wants me to do to my house. The state and the federal government really do not care. If my property is listed, I cannot change anything. This is absolutely false. You can remodel your kitchen or bathroom. You do not need state or federal approval for any of these actions. You can even give your building a new use. As long as there are no federal or state funds or licenses involved, you're not restricted to the work that you can do. I'll give some specifics later on in the presentation if you're seeking tax credits to help fund rehabilitation of your property. Any building 50 years or older is eligible for the listing in the National Register, State Register. This is false. You have to prove its significance. There is a general criteria that says that after 50 years, a property can be evaluated for listing, but that doesn't mean it's automatically eligible. It has to show historic significance. Properties listed in the National Register require review by a local unit of government. This is false. This comes down to local laws, and this is not something that your town has established. All right. So another hot topic to help explain is what is the difference between national state registers and local designation? So the state and national register, like I said, are facilitated by the SHPO here at the Wisconsin Historical Society, and it's under state and federal laws. The review, your property would be reviewed if there is, for example, Caltrans is widening the highway or the road in front of you. At that point, your house or building being listed on the National Register would be brought up to make sure that they can assess any effects to it. Being listed on the national and state registers gets you the tax credits, which is really important. With local designation, it's administered by a local unit of government under a zoning ordinance. It's a completely different review. So why get your property listed? Why is this important? Well, it's bragging rights. This is an honorific designation. It shows that you have a very significant building in your community. And that can help bolster tourism to your town by keeping up these historic buildings and bring revenue back into your town. We are all proud of our buildings, but as property ownership goes, there's always maintenance that comes up, which leads us to the tax credit program. This is a huge incentive to have your property listed. The benefits do not include fixtures. The state and federal government will not pay for a brand new refrigerator for you, but they will help with the general maintenance of repairs, roof replacement, electrical, plumbing systems, really expensive items that you can help get funding for. So there are two different types of tax credit programs. We have the income producing one, which is a state and federal 20% match. And then you have the homeowner, which is a non-income producing tax credit. This would be your primary residence. And that is a 25% state tax credit. And how this works is you fill out an IRS investment credit form when you're filing your taxes. But this is not a one-time option. So let's say you need your roof replaced 1 year. That's great. You file all the tax credit paperwork for that. You work with our office to make sure it's done properly. And then let's say you have plumbing issues. You can get another tax credit after the first time expires, and you can receive more money. It's the gift that keeps on giving. So, in order to calculate to determine if your project will qualify for tax credits, for income producing, you must spend $5,000 or the adjusted basis, whichever is greater. The adjusted basis is the purchase price minus the land value. The credit is first allowed in the taxable year that the qualified rehabilitated building is placed in service. Your property has to be listed on the National Register in order to obtain these credits. And while I'm here, I'll go ahead and tell you about the homeowner tax credit as well. A similar situation, 25% state tax credit, and the scope of work needs to be spent between $10,000 and $40,000 to qualify. Multiple projects can be open at the same time. I will say I went to school for historic preservation. I'm not an accountant, but I highly recommend you talk to yours if you're interested in taking advantage of this project or this program. So I just threw out a lot of information. If you have any questions, I'm Elizabeth Hilton. You can reach me at the State Historic Preservation Office. It's located within the Wisconsin Historical Society. I've also included Paul Porter up here. He is our tax credit reviewer. He has a lot of experience in working with this program, and he can help you and decide what you can and cannot do to your building if your property is a contributor and you wish to seek tax credits. And then lastly, I just want to end up here with the wisconsinhistory.org. You can go up there. There is an architecture and history inventory. It's a historic property database. You can find your property up there oftentimes. If your property is located within the district, Tracy has put a form up there so that you can see it. There's also pages for property owners, helpful things regarding tax credits, as well as other things. If you want to find historic images, if you want to learn about genealogy, I welcome you to this site so you can learn more information. And with that, Tracy is going to take over. I will be here afterwards. Any questions right now, though? Questions? It's a lot of information. Yeah, go ahead.
I got one.
Sure.
You talked about getting building registered.
Yeah.
John,
So,
I need you to go up to the microphone, please.
So I'm John Torinas, and I'm the secretary of the Historic West Bend Theater, Inc., and we got our historic registration. In fact, the plaque just arrived. It's going up as we speak. Gus Peters is going to put it up this week. And we did get the credits. The credits are 20% at the state level, and that's a relatively easy process. So we were the construction side of our deal was about $3 million, so we got 20%. We got $600,000 in credits. And you get the same 20% at the federal level, but that's a nightmare, getting the federal credits. And but what my question is, what does the district do? I mean, we did this without a district, if I'm in a district, how does it facilitate that process?
Sure. I'd be happy to answer that. And congratulations on the listing of your building. That's really exciting. So being a part of a district is you're already listed on the National Register. As you said, you already have access to all these tax credits. What it's about is help maintaining the historic corridor. When you have money going into a downtown historic district, it's going to help your building. So by other buildings in the district having access to these tax credits, they're going to be maintaining their buildings. They're going to be keeping them up and help draw more people downtown for more than just a nice sculpture, although that does sound exciting.
If we could have a little dialogue. So
Oh, sure, absolutely.
I don't get what the district does for us.
Well, the district, when you're surrounded by other historic buildings and you have these well-maintained buildings that are right next to you, people are going to go to these other shops. They're going to go to these other
Sure.
businesses, and then they're going to come to your property, right? They're going to hang out more downtown because there's more to offer there. It's going to draw
So
people
you're saying
back
there's
to the downtown.
a positive marketing
It's a
effect?
very positive marketing aspect.
Okay, but there's no
Yeah.
extra money from the state.
Well, you are ahead of the game, so you're.
No,
you're
I'm talking
all-
about this,
you're-
does the district get any money?
The district does, yeah. If you're a contributor, then you get money. If you're a non-contributor, where you're a newer building or your property's been altered so much, then unfortunately you are not able to get access to them.
Collectively, it makes the other buildings eligible for the tax credit.
Correct.
Okay,
Right,
I got it. So
right.
that was collectively, you got us a leg up if you apply as an individual building owner? Is that the idea?
Well, it's easier because your property's already listed, right? You've got all
Each
the
property is in the
documentation.
district is listed without being on the register. It's listed, but it's not registered, okay.
You have to file a Part 1.
Okay, so we went through this, and I would offer that if anybody wants to get their building listed and go for credits, we're more than happy to help. And we had to hire a historic building expert to get on the registry. And then we also had to hire another consultant to get the credits. So and the federal credits are just incredibly complicated. And then if you're a nonprofit like we are, what do you do with a tax credit? We don't pay any taxes.
Well, you sell it.
You sell the credits, that's
Yes.
correct, at a discount. So we sold our credits at I think a 20% discount. There are a lot of buyers out there for tax credits. In our case, we found a local buyer, and so it really helps. So it was a $3 million project plus some stuff that was not eligible. 40% of that, you guys can do the math, 40% of 1.2 million. I don't think we could have pulled off, our total project was 4.6 million. I don't think we could have pulled it off without the credits. And when we went into it, a couple of local savants said, no way you're going to get the credits, because it's a fairly laborious process. But we did, and the state process is relatively straightforward, so.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Thank you so much for telling us your
Don't exactly
experience.
understand what the district does for it, but I'm in favor of it.
Well, the district, it's for the greater good of the overall downtown area so that more people can take advantage of the incentives that you had to help you restore that theater, which is really wonderful.
Yeah, I would like to see some money go to the district.
Well, I would like to see some money too, but
Elizabeth, in order to qualify for a historic district, does there have to be a set number of buildings?
no, there does not. It could be a block, just one block. It could be a complex of multiple buildings on one parcel. Or it could be like the downtown district that Tracy's going to talk about next, and where you have 69 total buildings. It really ranges. I used to live in a town that had over 1,000 buildings in the historic district. What it's about is having that cohesive character of a grouping of properties within a specific age range that retain integrity, architectural integrity.
Obviously, I'm way into this subject, okay?
Yeah.
As a practitioner. But, I like the idea of a district, not because there's money or help coming from the state. You gotta do this on your own, building by building. But, you know, the city has gone on a campaign with Jess and Jay to turn West Bend into a destination. So people come here because the city, because the downtown is so attractive as a collective. And that's happening. I mean, they've got a lot of great stuff going on downtown. And I think people are coming here not necessarily to go to the Bend or MOA or the sculpture collection. They're coming here because of the collection of all of these amenities. So I like the idea of doing this from a marketing point of view, and being a historic district from a marketing point of view. And maybe some other buildings then would go and qualify for the registry, the historic registry. And then my general advice would be go for the state historic credits at 20%, because they're relatively straightforward. Now again, if you're a for-profit like Mike, he makes a ton of money. He can write this off. The 20% is dollar for dollar against your taxes. But I would caution on going for the federal unless you're really going to be tenacious about it. But I think the most important thing here is that we get this sense of creating the core of our community, the central city, the downtown, as a very attractive destination. In fact, you got a couple of grants from the state for that, right? A tourism grant? No, the city does a tourism grant. And so we got something going here. I don't know how much the historic district will help us, but it certainly can't hurt.
So John, just for clarification, the bid board is already approved and move forward. That's why we have the next presentation, because we've invested in the next.
I thought you were done
in
here.
the next phase of it.
Right,
no,
well,
so
I apologize.
we're now waiting to see where we know what buildings are already qualifying that are going to be contributing. It's now going to the review process, and that's what we're here to kind of find out where we're
I
at.
jumped ahead. I thought she was the final.
We've been working on it for about
a
a year.
The Washington House is registered, isn't it?
I believe so.
It's on the registry. Yeah.
It
No.
is not.
It will be though.
It is not.
We're the only one downtown.
And the post office.
Post office.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Right before
Sorry,
Tracy.
I jumped ahead, but
Oh, no. I appreciate your feedback. Right before Tracy comes and presents which buildings are located in the district, what are contributors, non-contributors, I want to say what helps facilitate the tax credit process is hiring a consultant like you did. There are consultants that do that specialize in tax credits, and the state has a list of those that we're happy to provide out, Tracy being one of them. And they can help walk you through what will be approved, what will not be approved. Paul Porter, tax credit reviewer, is really great in helping you out as well, and he can help facilitate with the state and federal tax credit, their program. We have contacts at the federal government who can also help assist you. So this program is here to help you. You have beautiful buildings in this town, and we want to bring in that tourism and bring in that revenue too. So don't be afraid to reach out to us with any questions, because we're really here to help assist you. Pull this up.
Like you press arrow up or down, or which?
Either one. I do the space bar.
Oh,
But
okay.
it's not showing. I think to go from the beginning. There you go.
Okay. All right, fabulous. Just a quick note, one of the questions was, and she already answered it as far as a district. I just did a district on 5 buildings, so they can be relatively small. And also, I don't want Mr. Torinos to scare you all from the federal tax credit application. You have a fairly complicated building. That is, you have that. The vast majority of the buildings downtown are not as complicated as his. So I just don't want you to be scared. It's not that scary. And I really don't like doing the tax credit stuff myself. But so for me to say that is a big deal. So, all right, I am just going to do, can everybody hear me okay? a quick overview of the district, the buildings, which ones are contributing, non-contributing, why they're non-contributing. And then I am just going to go through each decade, tell you how many were built, focus on one of them very briefly because you're all familiar with them all, and you all have places to go and work to do yet today. So again, I'm Tracy Schnell. I am the consultant who actually, the state actually hired me to complete the nomination. That was started by Nicole Bell here. We're a little off, but I think everything's up there. So ultimately, the district is eligible under two criteria. Criterion A has to do with history. It is eligible for that it represents the commerce, history of commerce in the city of West Bend. And then criterion C has to do with architecture. And again, it has a good representation of architectural styles that were popular between 1864 and 1977, which is what we call the period of significance. This means the buildings that are contributing to the district were built within this period. Typically, there's a 50-year cutoff, so that would be 1972. However, the buildings that were completed in the 70s fit the styles, the rest of the styles that are in the district. So basically it's a criteria consideration that we have to meet, and so we can push it out to 1977. There are 69 total buildings in the district, 60 of which are contributing and 9 of which are non-contributing. The non-contributing buildings are generally properties that have been altered such that you do not recognize them from either how they were originally built or from a remodel that occurred outside of the period of significance. So you can have a building, which I will show you one of them, that may have been built in 1900, using one of that I'll be showing you, and it was actually remodeled in about 1918. So it may not look exactly like it did when it was built in 1900, but it still looks like it did when it was remodeled in 1918, which falls within the period of significance for the district, if you're following that. Okay. In addition to the 69 buildings, there are 2 non-contributing sites, those being both of the parks, Old Settlers Park and Vest Pocket Park, because there is nothing historic about either of them other than the fact that the space was there for Old Settlers Park for a long time. And then the 3 structures that are considered to be non-contributing are the 2 bank building structures, the ATM and the drive-through facility, as well as the bandstand that's in the park. So, and again, we have 2 previously listed National Register properties, which, as we know, we have the West Bend Theater, and the other one being the post office. So these are the maps. The downtown is broken up into 2 maps, and it marks the 9 non-contributing buildings, identifies the 2 that are individually eligible. So this was a challenge, I will say. There are no building permits available in the city prior to 1951. Usually in commercial districts, you've got something at least from the 1910s or 1920s on. So that did cause a little angst for me. There are also no city directories. Normally there are city directories for, and I say larger cities, I would count West Bend in Obviously it's a smaller city, but I was a little surprised there weren't any city directories as opposed to phone books. City directories typically include a reverse directory in the back that goes by address, and it tells you what was there, which is very helpful in trying to trace how the building evolved. Because commercial buildings, as you know, they have seen, some of them, 25 lives over their 100+ years. Assessor's information, unfortunately, was not always reliable as far as the original date of construction. And the Heritage Center, while they have a boatload of materials, that was very, very helpful for me, they weren't organized by address, and nor were there photos. So there was a lot of information, but hard to match the information to the buildings. So what did I have to do? I actually had to look at historic tax rolls. Once I figured out about when something was built, using the assessor's information, I could then go to the tax rolls and look to see who owned it. And once you know who owns it, then you can start looking in, say, the business files that the Tower Center has, to look up what they did there. And then once you know that, you can go through the historic photos. And like I said, historic photos are not, you can't just go, I want to know, they're not marked, this is 139 North Main Street or whatever. They're just kind of random. So I ended up going through each and every box of photos that the Research Center has and just went one by one, looking for ones I recognized. So Sanborn fire insurance maps were very helpful. Those were published nationally, and they were done at regular intervals, and it would actually show prior to 1920 what was in the building. So you start pulling all of these things together, and you can actually figure out when something was built, who the original owner was, and what happened there. So, and then the other fun part was the transitional shutter series that the city did on Facebook. That was actually very helpful in some cases for me as well. But it was overall fun doing the research. So again, starts with 1864. This is the first building, was in fact a Washington House. See. So, and then I'm also going to include a lot of historic images, if possible. That is what they like to see at the review board in Madison also. So, because what they want to see is how much does it still look like what it did originally. So we have the Washington House representing the beginning of the district. There are only 2 buildings that represent the 1860s and 1870s in West Bend. The second being the Lemke Block, which I finally realized after reading a bunch of things that it was actually built in 2 periods. First in 1869, and the second half was finished in 1878. Let's see. In the 1880s, 6 buildings were built in the district, one being the Frankenberg and Castens block, which most people historically know it as the Peters grocery store. Built in 1881, 1899, and then there was actually one more addition prior to 1910, which I wasn't able to fully find. The architect was Henry Kamen, and I had never heard of this gentleman, and I've been doing this for 25 years. Turns out he actually married Susie Mayer of the Mayer Brewing Company, and that must be how he got his foot in the door here. And he designed buildings for about 15 years, and then he went back to school to be a PT, gym teacher. But then he actually still continued to design buildings, some of which he continued to design here in West Bend for the Mayer family. 1893, fire. if you're familiar. There's a fire downtown that affected a number of buildings. It started in the barn of the Winans Farmer and Transient Hotel. And Mr. Winand was the first person, actually it looked like the only person, to rebuild immediately in 1893. And obviously we still have that building here as well. But a total of 7 buildings were built in the district in 1893. In the 1900s, 1900 to 1910, 8 buildings were built, and 3 specifically built in 1907. So that was kind of a hot year for construction. And incidentally, was able to find a historic photograph that actually shows all 3 buildings in the historic photograph from the bottom, which dates to 1918. It's from a parade, a World War I demonstration parade. And sorry, we had a little bit of an issue with her software on her laptop, so that's why some of my things aren't marrying up to how it looked on my screen on my computer. So sorry about that. In the 1910s, it had a total of 3 buildings built. These are the ones I really like when they have initials on the front and the year of construction. That helps me to find what I need to find. And then here's an example of a Sanborn map at the bottom that shows this was in fact a hardware store. The 1910s also is the year or the decade when a lot of the remodeling began. The example I gave you at the beginning, the Ziegler Hotel. On the far left is the historic image where you can see there's corbelled brickwork between the 2nd and 3rd stories. And sometime around 1918, the whole front was refaced. And fortunately, there was a photograph, the bottom right-hand photograph, which shows that it was West Bend Plumbing and Heating in there at that time. So even though it doesn't look like it was originally done, the rebricking, the building itself has the same form and architectural character minus the brickwork. So therefore it is still contributing. The 1920s, 7 buildings were built. Designed by Lee Hunt. I was able to find a number of architects that were unknown previously, as in unknown to the greater public, not unknown overall. So Milwaukee architect Lee Hunt designed this building. And this, even though the Masonic Lodge here, they had been around since 1862, they did not actually have their own building until this one was built in 1923. It was, however, the bottom photo is of the Patrick Harms building, which was built in 1898, and previously the lodge had been located in that building. The 1930s began with a fire at the Hangartner block. So this is one of the non-contributing buildings, largely because it has lost its entire 3rd story to the fire, and the front has been remodeled as well. So the 30s started with the fire, and it was originally German Renaissance Revival style, which, as you can see, it is no longer representing that style. But 5 buildings were built in the 1930s, one of which was the Schmidt Funeral Home. Again, Milwaukee architect John Brecker designed the building, and thanks to the Schmidt family, they passed along some historic photos as well as the plans to me. And the funeral home was actually the first funeral home, purpose-built funeral home built in the county. The 1940s, only 3 buildings were built. And this was the Carroll House, a department store. It was later Campbell's department store. By this time, West Bend was already home to major retailers, JCPenney and Sears, but still carried smaller stores. The 1950s saw the most construction in the district, either new construction or remodelings. And Dr. A. Karl Marth was fairly prolific in the remodeling business here downtown. He had bought up a number of buildings over the years and refaced them to make them, more modern. So the top left one is new construction in the 50s, whereas, and then the other three are just examples of other buildings that he built, either built new or did the remodeling for. He did a total of 6, to my knowledge, in the district. The 1960s, 4 new buildings were built. This one in the contemporary style, large expanses of glass. The 1970s, which I'm sure some of you are like, they're too new to be considered, but again, because of their, it's called new traditional colonial, and date to the 1970s, hence we're able to extend the period of significance to include these buildings. Otherwise, there would have been a significant gap in the historic district if we weren't able to extend it.
Is that not contributing to the single building?
What's that?
Is the single building not contributing?
It is 3, so even though it is considered by most as one building, they were built separately. So I was able to say that 3 of them were contributing, but the new one that was built in 96, if I recall, 96, 98, that one ends up being non-contributing. So, and because I don't want to bore you with styles, ultimately, there's a lot of styles represented in the district, which I discuss at length in the nomination, and just throw up a couple of examples of some of the styles there for pretty pictures. And that's the district. So, like I said, I have very detailed information on pretty much each and every one of those buildings. If anybody has any questions or specific questions about their own buildings, but otherwise that was just a brief overview of why it's significant. It represents the commerce of the city and architectural styles that were popular in the state between the 1860s and the 1970s.
Jess, you have a question?
Well, I just want to extend our thanks to you, Tracy. You've done so much work on this project. We've been working on this nomination for years. Our internal team, the bid board, everyone's been really excited to get to this point, and it now goes to on November 19th or 18th, right?
Yep.
To Madison for final review and hopefully approval. So I just want to say thank you. I know it was a lot of work. We really appreciate all you've done to get us this far.
Thank you. And just know that the presentation that I'll be giving to the review board is going to be slightly different because they're not as familiar with the buildings as you guys are. I will have to talk a little bit more in depth about certain aspects, but.
Any questions?
I got one. I'm sorry to be a bother, but I've been doing this downtown stuff for 52 years, along with Mike Husar's dad and Mike. So if we get the district created, and I'm fully in favor of it, and the main thrust is a marketing presence, a marketing pull, does the state help us with that in any way? Do we get a plaque, a designation, a news? What do we get that puts the downtown historic district on the map from a marketing point of view?
I'm happy to answer that. So as you mentioned earlier, you're getting your plaque installed. It is not something that the state or the federal government. Yes, we will not pay for it, but you can. And y'all can decide to put a plaque up for the district. You can market it. You want to make it public. As I said earlier, it's an honorific designation, but it shows that you have really significant history here. You have really beautiful buildings, and you want to advertise that to everybody and draw them in downtown so they can appreciate it too. So I encourage you to install plaques, and we can give you places where you can get your own plaque if you want to put it on your building.
Well,
So just as a,
I was just going to say, and I don't want to say instead of plaques, because some of you may want an individual plaque on your building, that I've seen the banners on like the light standards that will say it's a historic district, marking it. So that's
So what
something.
started all this was there was conversation of changing the street signs to say historic. And that's actually what got this whole conversation started about 5 years ago by the bid board. So I'm guessing that if this goes through, which I think it will, something like that will probably come from this group.
Yeah, we're all doing our own individual marketing things, but somehow we need to coalesce it and sell it downtown. And obviously, we better work the historic theme through that marketing, and we're each doing individually, but also collectively. So the tower, obviously, is another.
So let's get through this phase, and then we'll start talking about that.
All right, I stand.
Are there any other questions that we can help answer?
Will we find out on the 18th if it's approved?
Yeah, that'll be for the state register. And yes, we will send out notification. I'm sure Jess will as well, so that you'll be aware of that. And after it's listed, it then goes to the Park Service. Once they receive the package in 45 days, they typically respond. Like most places, we are short-staffed, they are short-staffed, so we're all doing our best to move things along in the pipeline.
That's a national park?
That's for the...
National designation?
Yes, so you get national designation, and at that point, every single building owner will be aware of the official listing.
And probably as the state employee, she probably can't say this, but I will say I've been doing this consulting for 25 years, and ultimately it does not make it to review board for presentation unless it is going to make it all the way. So they do their best to make it, as tight and question-free so that it does go through the process. So I think I've seen two of them not make it, and and they knew they weren't going to make it. So if that allays anyone's concerns.
And one thing regarding marketing, there is some things that the Wisconsin Historical Society does, because we're proud of our state. We're proud of these towns and the buildings that we have. So we put out Facebook posts, we put out press releases. Every single time it's listed on the state and the National Register, there's a huge press release that goes out so that everybody is aware, hey, West Bend was listed. Maybe I should go visit that downtown. So there is a little perk in there.
Did you guys pay for all this research work? Did the state pay for it?
The state did pay for it. You're welcome.
Any other questions? No, I know everybody has to get going. So with that, thank you very much for your presentation. We really appreciate you coming over early in the morning to do this. And with that, I'll move on to, if we have any agenda items, just in interest of time, get them to Jess or myself for the next meeting. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thanks, everybody. See you Thursday night.
See you, Jeff.